All right, so we have a blog post today. Director's take saying continuing the 6v6 discussion. Welcome back to another Director's Take back in July. Wow, it's been that long. I didn't even realize that. We opened the conversation around 6v6 and 5v5. And now we'd like to continue that conversation as well as share a few updates coming in Season 13 and Season 14. Previously, we talked about the different form changes throughout Overwatch's history, why we switched to 5v5, and where we plan to go from here. Included in those next steps, we said we're looking at running a series of tests to try out different core team composition formats in Overwatch 2. Did my audio die? Okay, I was going to say, no, I have it charged. Okay. These format tests are all about understanding if we can make the core game even stronger. Every day, millions of players jump into the core 5v5 format, and the last thing we want is to negatively impact the experience. What do you mean? Twitter says like 5 people play Overwatch. What are you talking about? Obviously, they have a lot of players. The exciting thing about these tests is the potential to introduce something that could appeal to another group of players. Ones that might have felt uncertain about the move to 5v5 when Overwatch 2 launched. So, represent players who enjoy that a little bit more. Also, Silent, thanks for the free Prime. Thank you. If you didn't read the previous 6v6 Director's Take blog, check it out, because now we're going to dive into the plans for the 6v6 and format tests mentioned there. Also, chat, this definitely is a good blog post. It kind of talks about a lot of stuff, shows some graphs if anybody likes data. Basically shows that 6v6 queue times are astronomical, and 5v5 helps solve that issue. And that was their concern. And they talked about it all. So, upcoming 6v6 tests in Season 14. So, you hear that, chat? No tests this season, but in December. The team has been exploring our vision and development for these tests, and we're happy to announce we will be running 2 different 6v6 tests in Season 14. The first, launching a week into the season, will look a little different than the standard 2-2-2 role queue from Overwatch. Part of this series of tests is not to only judge our players' appetite for larger team sizes, but for us to explore different ways that we might implement a change without running into the same problems we had previously. With that in mind, our first test will be a variation of open queue, which we're internally referring to as min 1, max 3. Each of the team of 6 must have at least 1 of each role and no more than 3. So you could have, 3 tanks, 3 DPS, 3 supports. I still think you'll end up having, hero stack in here where you would just go, 3 tanks, 2 supports, and, a DPS, or, which is my concern when I see that, right? Because, you can still make it work. Just think of a DPS that could fit in there, or, 2 tanks, a DPS, and 3 supports. There's definitely a way to bring those comps back, so I hope they take that into account. There are a few different combinations here that you'll be able to try, but this opens up many different team compositions that we haven't seen before in Overwatch 2. You will be able to switch roles on the fly during a match as long as that switch doesn't break the min 1, max 3 limit. Oh, I can see that going well. Yo, get off tank. I'm sick and tired of this, and I'm stuck on max 3. Switch. Besides experimenting with a format that could be seen as a middle ground to role queue and open queue, this will also give us a look at how Overwatch 2 heroes, abilities, and updates work in a 6v6 environment before we expand to other types of tests. The second 6v6 test during Season 14 mid-cycle will be the classic 2-2-2 composition, but will incorporate some new principles we introduced with Overwatch 2, like less CC and hero reworks. I do like the idea of that. So all thanks to the Tier 1, thank you. The 6v6 tests will have their own card and unranked alongside other modes, and they will not take place of other type of game modes like seasonal events or quick play hacked. We'll also be implementing a series of balance changes that will apply to these 2 test modes only. I like to hear that. I was going to ask that question if they're going to do some rebalancing, so it's good to see that. The power and survivability of tanks will go down in these 6v6 formats, and we'll be taking a look at whether we need many of the passives that we added in Overwatch 2. So it sounds like what they're going to do is they're going to do a type of balance, they're going to tone down tanks to kind of go back to where they were, and then see how it feels. I don't mind the idea of that, though, for a second. I don't know how the 3 max, 1 min will do, but, a 2-2-2 version, I think testing that out, testing the waters on that, seeing what people like, what they don't like, is a good way. Keep in mind, this isn't them saying that they're going right to 6v6 or they're going to do like that. It's more along the lines of, in order for them to be able to properly do these tests right, they need to get feedback, and they need to have it to the players, and this is a way to do that. So I don't mind the idea of trying this out, seeing how it plays, right? He said, oh, good, we're already theory crafting even worse comps. There you go. Upcoming modes in Season 13. We will be hosting 2 5v5 format experiments in Season 13 that are also aimed at testing flexibility within this format, similar to the 6v6 tests. We're planning a quick play hack to come in soon, which we are calling Limit 2. This will be 5v5 with the maximum number of each role limited to 2. This includes tanks, but they will be tuned to open queue balance, meaning they will have less health. You can freely switch heroes and roles as long as the new role doesn't already have 2 players. I will say, I like the idea of what they're trying to do here, because if you can just queue up for the game and then make a decision, the queue times will get better regardless, right? Like, that will make queue times better because, like, no matter what, with the Limit 2, you need to have players. The problem is that, like, there is that, like, fill aspects of, like, there's definitely issues with it, but I can also see why it would help with a lot of other stuff, right? My concern is the insta-lock issue, but, like, at the same time, this is one of these, I like the concept, I need to see how it is type of things. And it may not even work. It might just not work at all. But it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Keep in mind, it is a quick play hacked, and I want to reiterate that a quick play hack does not mean it's going into the game. I don't even know if we've seen a quick play hack go into the game yet. It's more about getting data and being able to test it. So, like the 6v6 limit tests, we're trying to look at how the game in its current state works if players had more freedom with team compositions without making it full open queue. This also kind of might alleviate some of the problems of, like, having, like, a dominant tank, which is interesting. I also, hearing all this, I'm glad I've become a bit more of a flex queue player, because at least I'm not having the tank roll moved all over the place into different stuff all the time, only playing tanks. So, at least, we got a little bit of the flexibility going for us now. For Season 13 mid-cycle, we're planning a special game mode currently codenamed Kingmaker. Like Limit 2, the maximum number of each role is limited to 2. However, the player who is alone in their role gets a bonus. We will talk more about how the mode works in more detail closer to its launch, but like Limit 2, we're exploring more freedom in 5v5 while enabling more types of compositions to succeed. So basically, if you're, like, the only DPS player, you're going to get a buff to compensate for being the only hero. I will say, doesn't it feel like, and maybe this is tinfoil hat, but this is 2 Limit 2s we're seeing in 2 different modes. I wonder if this is something they're highly considering. Like a Limit 2 and then add on, like, the new things we saw in the arcade with, like, all that stuff. Going into next year, of course. Very interesting. Quick Play Hacked, Limit 2, and Kingmaker will provide an excellent benchmark and framework for us going into 6v6 tests. We're looking forward to seeing what statistics we can gather as you dive into these modes, alongside your feedback, which is one of our strongest data points. Which, once again, they need to test this stuff because this is how they can find if the data is going to work. Or, like, rather than just do it. Ooh, this is an interesting discussion. A world with 5v5 and 6v6. Huh. And I talked about this, right? Where I feel like there's a world where they do that. As we mentioned in our previous piece, we will be watching the reception and results of these tests closely. Another sentiment from that piece that I would like to reiterate here is that the Overwatch team wants to make the game that you want to play. So what does that mean for the future based on these experiments? In the world where a surge of players join this mode and continuously play it, then we have the signal that we need to do more with it. I think what the more is depends on the level of excitement. Is there a world where both 5v5 and 6v6 exist permanently in Overwatch 2? If you had asked me a few months ago, I would have said no. As we've discussed Overwatch 2's future in light of making the game that our players want to play, we know our players can want more than one experience, and it would be something we'd need to consider moving forward. That's interesting, right? So it sounds like if the 6v6 tests go well, they will then reconsider their opinion on, like, if there should be 2 different ways to play it. So what we're learning from this, though, is they're not going to get rid of 5v5. 5v5 is here to stay. And I can pretty much get that from this. Like, they're not going to change the whole game and make it 6v6. All right? 5v5 is here to stay. So people who are worried about that, you don't have to worry about that. What they're saying is, if there's excitement and a lot of enjoyment around the 6v6, they're now willing to do both and find ways for players to play they want. And I'm not surprised that they're willing to do that, because it's the same thing that you see in World of Warcraft nowadays, where they have World of Warcraft, The War Within, World of Warcraft Classic, World of Warcraft Hardcore. They want to give players the option to play any of them. And while some of them will have less player bases, if players want to play that way, then they can go play that way. If they want longer queues, that's fine. They can go and wait a little bit longer, and that's okay if they want to play Overwatch in that setting. So it's a very interesting concept with that one, where we will have to see how it goes, but I wouldn't doubt it if they end up doing this, where they have enough players, like, you know, they have open queue in Overwatch, right? Think about that. And that is a very, you know, I think they said it's like, well, only like 10% play open queue or something like that. So if they even see like numbers like 10%, 15% of people going into the 6v6, I wouldn't doubt it if they're like, hey, you know what? That's enough for us, and here we go. So, you know, basically what they're saying is, if you are a player who is very adamant about 6v6, play in these modes and show that excitement and feedback towards it, and they're very willing to make those changes. That's what it feels like, right? Did you only play open queue? Fair, you know? So that's what it seems like to me right now, right? So we'll see. Oh yeah, I mean, it could be closer to 30%. We don't really know, right? I think people sometimes underestimate how many people don't want to sit in 20-minute queues or 15-minute queues. But like, at the same time, there are a lot of people who do and don't have a problem with it. And to be honest with you, the max 3 thing they're talking about might alleviate some of those problems, right? Where the queue times, if you don't have a role to queue but a max 3, well, maybe that leads to a world where like the queue times are fine because you just have players who go in there, and it's actually going to probably be a lot more flex players at that point, right? It's an interesting thing, but I think the max 3 could help alleviate that issue. And I think, yeah, for the people who enjoy 6v6, and just to give people my stance on 5v5 versus 6v6, I've enjoyed playing both. I know people want you to pick one side and they get mad if you don't, but like, I've enjoyed playing both. I have fun on both. So like, you said 6 sub animation? Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's they did a really good job with all my animations. I've been super happy with them. Like, my animations have been pretty sick. But yeah, so it's definitely something like I'm excited to see. And I think like, for the people who are on the 6v6 side, it's definitely a good sign that they're taking that into account, right? Like, that they're taking that into account with the max 3, because they're not just sitting here going, hey, here's 222. Guess what? Go have fun and get rolled. Your queue times are long. They're saying, hey, we also want to work with you. So yeah, that's no worries. It's no worries. Yeah, they did a great job with my animations. So yeah, I think it's a good sign for people who do like 6v6, just to point that out. Like, they are in a spot where they're like willing to not only try 6v6, but also make iterations that never were seen before in Overwatch 1. And I think that's a good sign for the 6v6ers. Straight up. Super Snake, thanks to 21 months of the tier 1. Thank you. So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know about y'all, but Season 14 is going to be unreal. And let me explain why. We got a new tank hero, and then we have all these tests happening. Also, isn't it the same time Marvel Rivals comes out? This is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I was going to say, well, I agree that I think like having... When I remember back in July, my first reaction to this was like, my first reaction was, hey, like, they want to do a, you know, it sounds like they're willing to make it so like 6v6 is something you can play, right? But now they're looking for ways to make it better for those players. So we'll see what happens. Like, obviously we'll test it out. We'll give proper feedback, and I'll play both modes and see how I feel, right? And I think that'll be a really cool option. So we'll see. Like I said, we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes, but it's definitely exciting, and I think it's also a good sign that they're willing to make these changes rather than being very like hard stuck in the way of, no, we're gonna make it the way we want to, and if you don't like it, deal with it, right? So it's a good sign. And I think I think a thing to point out too is I feel like a lot of the team that the Overwatch team now, we're not talking about in previous years, the current Overwatch team definitely is very much willing to make a lot more changes, except when it comes to Orisa. I'm kidding. I had to throw that in there. Okay, anyway. More to come closer to Season 14. The upcoming months are going to have a ton of excitement with Quick Play Hacked. Limit 2 and Kingmaker in Season 13. Wait. Oh, yeah, this is this season. I'm looking forward to trying these Quick Play Hacks this season. I forgot about that because I went on a 6v6 one. So, oh, by the way, you talking about the end of Overwatch 1. The reason why Overwatch 1 at the end of it didn't have many players is because there was no new updates. Like, that's another thing I think that sometimes gets underestimated in a lot of this is like you can have a really core community and it can be a small core community, but when you don't update your game, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like if you don't update your game, then players will go find other things to do. And that's what happened with Overwatch 1. And that's why Overwatch 2, and they tell you that there's millions of players, it's because like they update the game frequently. So there's a reason to at least come back and try the game out. Like that's why. There's reasons to try it out. You may not like an update. You might load into Season 13 and go, you know what? Not for me, but you know what? I know in 2 months, we have content and I can try it out then, right? When they join into that like live service game, there's like a lot of players that I call it hype cycles. They check out the games, they'll play Apex, they'll play Valorant, they'll play League, they'll play Overwatch, and they go between the games based off of patches, and if they like it, they'll play it, and if they don't like it, they have other stuff they can like go and play. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to kind of point that out. Okay, and they say multiple 6v6 tests in Season 14, and maybe, they say maybe, another special surprise just around the corner. Yeah, Megan's going, yeah, we have to... See, Megan's like, yeah, you're right. You're not kidding, because they have to go right at it again. You know, like, right away, got to find more stuff. So, you know, the thing about, like, a live service game for the devs is while we're enjoying Season 13, they're over there trying to play on Season 16. They're like, they don't even have time to enjoy their season. They're moving on to 3 seasons from now. So, you know? Anyway, you were in a Season 16 meeting earlier? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't even have time. You're like, we gotta go ahead. We're ahead of that, you know? The team couldn't be more stoked to share these updates with you, and we'll be diving in alongside you. The way that we take Overwatch to the next level is by centering all of you at the heart of what we create and the directions we take together. Your feedback and collaboration with our team will always be an essential part of Overwatch's development. Stay tuned for more news and announcements in the weeks to come, and we'll have more information to share on the 6v6 tests in Season 14 and quick play hacked events closer to their launches, which, by the way, I like that. I just want to point it out. I like ending the blog with saying when we'll get more stuff. I think sometimes that's a good thing to add to blog posts to let players know, like, we're going to come back, we're going to let you know, and it's going to be around this time. So I want to add that. I like that little touch at the end there saying closer to launch. So now we can expect like a late November, maybe a early December type of like announcement on that. So, you know what I mean? And it says, let's make a great game. So yeah, to summarize, we're going to have a pretty stacked December, and even this season with trying out some of the quick play hacks. I'm actually excited to try the quick play hacks. They sound pretty cool. So, to get a general idea. One thing's for sure, the Overwatch team that we have now is a lot different than how they used to do things. And, you know, obviously I'm biased because I'm an Overwatch streamer. I stream a lot of Overwatch, so there's going to be bias here, obviously. Like, this is what I do. But the current team really wants the game to be the game that people they don't sit there and like just laugh like yes, they're not having fun. Like, they want to make it a game that everybody enjoys, and they really want to. So hopefully this continues to go in the right direction, and going into next year, it keeps getting better and better for players, right? And you can see that with the team. They're super passionate. They put a lot of work into it, and they really want to do there. They really want to get the game to a point where like people love it. So anyway.